Any startling philosophy this week?
I need to practice being more quiet, Stephen. I don't really have much to say philosophically.
Also exploring the issues around Plato's different governments.
Yes.
Now, I think after looking at it, there might have been cases in, say, ancient Greece where you had a, let's say, one of these governments distinctly forming in a particular city-state. But I think on the whole, especially with larger states, is you have the elements which create these different governments. For example, they say the oligarchy is a product of the plutocrats, the extremely wealthy. They
Yeah.
sort of band together, and they might, in some cases, be the actual dominant element, but in a lot of cases, they're simply strongly present. So all the different levels of government might have a presence, aristocracy, timocracy, uh, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. Now, the interesting thing is it seems to be an evolution that you sort of begin with aristocracy, and as the desire for wealth increases, the others, like timocracy, is more the landowners. Or, for example, medieval Japan was a timocracy where the shogun controlled the emperor. The emperor was a mere figurehead. Uh, Now, interesting as they become very materialistic, you look at these higher forms of government and the ideals they espouse are much higher. For example, truth, courage, loyalty. But when you start to get down to oligarchy, they make the point that these values decline with oligarchy or with mercantilism on one hand. They still aspire to one value, and that's prudence, because losing money is a bad idea. But when you get to democracy, the population is becoming imprudent. Now, of course, the Greeks realised democracy is a terrible phase of government, absolutely awful. Good at making money, but the public will use the vote to vote itself more and more excess. But of course, you end up with tyranny. But a philosopher was making the interesting point that you look at oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny, and these systems of government are focused on appetite, on material things, whereas the aristocracy and democracy, to some degree, were focused on the greater ideals. We've been talking about them in the sense, Kenneth Smith's claiming that this, aristocracy was devoted to developing the human being to a greater ideal, whereas we live in a consumer culture. The only thing we're interested in is in what we can buy to alleviate our boredom or some nonsense like that.
Well,
And philosophers pointing out is, I think, is introducing a bit of Marx and saying social alienation sets in the lower forms of government. You start with larger extended family groupings, a dominance in the oligarchy. In democracy, it's a nuclear family, and by the time you get to tyranny, the atomized individual has sort of begun to show up. And I think where our glorious Western civilization has been sliding through the lower system of governments. And when people see tyranny starting to appear in their glorious democracy, they're all confused. This isn't in the book, but yes, it is. It was in Plato. He said that's where you go when you value nothing but material things and yourself and what you can acquire. You can quit all the higher values that create a strong culture. And this is what we've been talking about in this Kenneth Smith, isn't it? Thank you.
You know, I think that's a good distinction between, the appetitive, the governments formed on as an extension of appetitive urges within human beings, and that those forms of government whose organization proceeds out of, these heuristic or value-oriented tendencies. Even in the Republic, the book by Plato, you sort of get two views of society before you ever get his construction. The first, there's this long discussion with Cephalus, who's he makes war material. He's a defense contractor, makes shields and stuff like that. Became very rich due to the Peloponnesian War. But he talks about his values are he's glad that he became rich because he doesn't have to lie or cheat anymore. He can afford to pay his debts and to say what he believes because, he's so rich, nobody challenge him or anything. And you see a sort of, kind of a commercial. He views society as a very just commercial enterprise. But then following that, the very first city that's constructed in the Republic is the city of pigs, which Socrates says, I think there's a lot to be said for this city, but we'll move on to have a city capable of having heuristic values, But at this point, I'm not sure really that anything besides what Cephalus talked about is real. That the city constructed in the Republic is like a geometer or something constructing a ruler and a compass. It lets you measure societies. It's not actually one that you could have. It's like, oh, we don't want nepotism. Well, by golly, they found the cure for that in the Republic. You don't even know who your children are. You don't know who your relatives are. You just eliminate uh, certain things that probably can't actually, in fact, be done. So I don't know. I would be interested if you ever drop it in the chat, kind of who you're reading, you know, on uh, on Plato.
Well,
I
it
think
wasn't
I
something
think
that's
in the
read. I
laws,
was,
the laws is sort of an attempt more at, hey, given the kind of compromises you'd have to make, what kind of city would you get? But
uh, well, the interesting point is, I think in the different elements that create the different styles of government
yeah,
are often present side by side.
oh, of course, well, yeah,
One element might dominate. For example, some countries still have their residual aristocracy,
yeah,
but essentially they're democracies, like Denmark or something like that.
right. Well,
So we do have an oligarchy of huge commercial interests who might wield significant power, but we're still supposedly a democracy.
yeah,
And
well,
you have a leader at the moment, which is sort of likes to be a tyrant if he can be, although you're still theoretically a democracy.
Well, Stephen, I always wanted to live in a society where I could be a philosopher plumber. You know, that that the people that do the lowest levels of work, even in an aristocracy, have to be capable of understanding the organization of the whole and how it actually helps them live a better life. Or they just see, well, gosh, we ought to eat the rich because they're just stealing from us, you know.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
all your humans are rich.
Oh,
You're taking too much from nature. So
yeah.
you're all on the list, I'm afraid.
Okay.
There's the name of the guy I was watching, David Kyle Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Which
Well,
university was
there's
it?
a
I
lot
can't
of
recall now.
I'm always, it's not that hard to get Marx into Plato and Aristotle with their sort of communalism or whatever.
Oh,
I'm
well,
I'm always surprised at how easy that is.
remember that socialism and communism preceded Marx.
Right.
He put his stamp on it so solidly now, as far as we're concerned, that it's all the same thing.
That's probably true. And it has the Marxism offers that the right people are going to be making the good decisions, just like the aristocracy. Oh,
I think the tragedy is that history indicates that it's struggle and travail that brings out the best qualities.
Well, it certainly the ones that survive get to the top, you know, I
But
think.
in societies which are well run and everybody's very satisfied, become complacent. What do they say? Hard times create strong men who create good times, and the good times create fallen men.
I think we ought to let Rick have his Kenneth Smith seminar.
What do you think? Should we do a Kenneth Smith seminar today?
I'm all for it. Let me shut off my audio.